I was homeschooled my whole entire life, and I never thought that I was sheltered in any way until this year. Now I'm 20, and I think it's just because everyone in my life now was public schooled, and the people I used to hang out with were all like part of my little like group of people that were just always homeschooled their whole entire life, never knew anything different. It's not like I didn't have friends, because I did have a pretty big friend group all my life, but like again, all of those people were always homeschooled. So I just thought that like, you know, none of us were sheltered, like we were normal. No. Last month I played Cards Against Humanity for the first time at a party with a bunch of people that I had never met in my entire life. Knew of the game, okay, obviously, but I did not realize that the cards were gonna like be like that. And I didn't expect to have to read those cards out loud to a group of people I've never met in my life. Needless to say, I was stuttering a lot. People were laughing at me. I was having a hard time reading those cards. I played the game for a second time in my life last night at another group gathering with a bunch of people I didn't know. I had a bit of an easier time reading the cards out loud. Kind of knew what to expect this time. And every time I used to come on here and tell you guys I was homeschooled, I would get so many hate comments of people being like, we can tell. Like, we can tell just based off the way you talk that you are very like homeschooled. And I would get so offended because I was like, I don't think so. I think I'm normal. Now that I'm like out in the world more than I ever have been and I'm like getting made fun of, I see what you guys were saying. You had a point. You had a point. I was staying with my cousins last week who were public schooled. Someone said something and I was like, FR. And then everyone looked at me and they were like, FR. And I was like for real? And my cousins are very blunt with me. And he goes, Jessie, that's the most sheltered thing I think I've ever heard you say. And so I asked both of my cousins, I was like, have you guys always thought that about me? Like, have you always thought that I was just like so sheltered? And immediately at the same time they both were like, yes. And then I was hanging out with my usual friend group last week, and one of the girls, one of my best friends, she goes, you guys think I have DSLs? And naturally I was like, what are DSLs? Everyone stares at me and they're like, Jessie, you don't know what DSLs are? And one of the guys in the group goes, oh Jessie, you have so much to learn. My best friend is having a similar experience because she was homeschooled her whole life, and she went to a frat party for the first time the other night, and she's texting me and she's like, Jessie, this is like nothing we've ever experienced. And I was like, I know. To be clear, I do not regret being homeschooled. My parents did not try to shelter me, and it actually gave me a lot more time to work on my career, and I don't think I would get to do what I'm doing now as my career if it wasn't for that. But am I a little socially awkward because of it? Yes. But it's going to be interesting because I'm realizing that going into my 20s for me is like the first day of public high school. I feel like a human experiment. I'm not sure if that's a good thing, but yeah.
I love freaking out the kids I work with by speaking their native language, right? So I'm teaching a brother and a sister. And the brother turns to his little sister and he says something to her in Mandarin. I see my opportunity. I look at him, I go, 你说中文吗? I won't lie, I thought it was going to be an opportunity where we bond because we speak the same language. I think that every single time, and every time I'm wrong because he looks at me like I recited his home address to him and he's like, 我说中文. I'm thinking, we're not going to talk about this again because he does not look pleased with me. And a couple minutes later, he passes me a piece of paper and on it is something written in Mandarin. Immediately, I know it's a test. If I don't pass this, he doesn't respect me. He's like, what does this say? I'm like, it says 我. He's like, what does that mean? I'm like, it means I or me. That's when I realized the fear in his eyes wasn't fear at all. Actually, it was fear a little bit, but it was fascination because he did not expect me being able to understand his Mandarin. So he starts passing me all these characters to read to him. He's like, can you read these 3 characters? I'm like, yeah, that says Li Wangpeng. He's like, that's my name. He was so excited because I could read his Chinese name, and I was so excited because I could read his Chinese name. I'm getting a little nervous because my Mandarin can only take me so far, and he's asking me questions like, 你为什么学习中文? And his sister looks at me after I answered those questions, and she's like, you can understand. You don't speak it very well, but you can understand. Thank you. Ouch. Thank you. She says it again. She's like, yeah, you can't speak it very well. She was like 5, so I'm gonna let it slide, but that hurt. Then their mom comes to pick them up, right? He runs to his mom and he starts whispering something in her ear, and then she turns around and goes, wow, you speak Mandarin? He was so excited. He told his mom. That's the bonding I was talking about. That's the bonding.
My husband wanted to open up our marriage, and now I'm dating his boss. So now he wants to close it. Let me start this by saying I didn't mean to start dating his boss. It all happened accidentally. My husband and I have been married for almost 8 years now, and we have always had a healthy marriage and great intimacy life, or so I thought. It came completely out of the blue when my husband sat me down a few months ago and said that he was feeling unsatisfied with our physical connection and he needed something more to be able to be fulfilled. I was so confused. We are intimate a couple of times a week, and he never gave any indication he was feeling unhappy in the bedroom. I was feeling hurt before he even dropped the bomb on me that he wanted to open up our marriage. I felt so small and unwanted, and he rambled on wanting to experience more freedom, but he assured me that he loved me and he wanted to stay together. I asked him why I wasn't enough for him and if there was anything I could do to make him happier in the bedroom or in our marriage in general. But all he said was that it had more to do with his masculinity than me. It didn't make me feel better, but I love him and we had already been together for so long. So reluctantly I agreed, and we decided to be open from that day on. Our only terms was that we had to disclose to one another when we would start seeing people. The first couple of weeks were excruciating. He immediately started seeing a woman from his office, and I would just stay at home and cry myself to sleep while I pictured him out with the younger, more attractive woman. I was devastated for a while and honestly had zero interest in dating anyone other than my husband. But after 5 months of him dating one girlfriend and spending most nights with her instead of at home with me, I decided that I deserved to experience some freedom as well. I made a Tinder account one night while he was out with his girlfriend, and I was surprised when I got over 100 matches on the very first night. No one was really catching my attention until I matched with this one very handsome older man. He seemed very successful and he was a gorgeous silver fox. I ended up messaging him and we went out a couple of days later. I remembered the feeling of waiting for him at the bar, and it felt nice to have romantic butterflies for the first time in almost a decade. The date went amazingly and we went to see each other and eventually slept together. It was one of the most thrilling, exotic nights of my life. I hate to say it, but he was a much more talented lover than my husband, and I guess because he was older, he had more experience. Anyways, I told my husband about my boyfriend, and he honestly seemed like he didn't believe me. He literally patted me on the head and said, "Aw, good for you, honey," before heading out the door to spend the night with his girlfriend. Things got messy in a way I could never have anticipated. I knew the situation was sort of rocky, but now I truly feel like I'm living inside a soap opera. Yesterday, my boyfriend texted me asking if he left a manila folder in my car the last time we saw each other. I found the folder and he asked if I could drop it off at his job. I was off that day and figured they were important work documents, so I gathered the folder and a little snack and he sent me his location so I could come drop it off. You can imagine how stunned I was when I followed the address and it took me to my husband's place of work. I had no idea that he and my husband worked together, and all I knew was that he was the head of whatever company he worked for and he held the highest position in his office. He never spoke much about his work and we just liked to relax when we hung out together. Well, I walked into the office feeling awkward about possibly seeing my husband. I walked to my boyfriend's office and he came out to take the folder from me. He thanked me and gave me a little kiss before going back. When I turned around, of course, my husband happened to be walking by at that exact moment. He had obviously seen his boss kiss me and realized he had been my boyfriend all along. His mouth made the perfect O shape and there was hurt creeping into his eyes. I felt sort of embarrassed at that moment, even though I had done nothing wrong, so I just said hi to my husband and quickly left the office. When my husband finally got home, he broke down in tears and said how I could do this to him. I reminded him that the entire situation was his idea in the first place, and that's when my husband said that he was willing to close the marriage if it meant I would stop seeing his boss. The thing is, I have real feelings for my boyfriend and I feel like my husband is being controlling and unfair. I find myself doubting my entire marriage and I think I might end up having to choose between the two of them. Let me tell you what happened, okay? He found someone that he liked at work and he wanted to get a little frisky, and what he did is that he opened his marriage, right? Forced you, manipulated, gaslight you into opening your marriage so that he could be a horn dog, thinking that you would never ever be with someone. And the fact that you found someone handsomer, more flexible, financially more richer than him, is killing him inside. It was never about opening up the marriage. It was about him fulfilling his own desires. Now that he's getting a taste of his own medicine, he wants to close it. Bye.